5 years ago, King Cyrus exiled his mate Lyra for being barren. Now, he summons her to his grand ball to humiliate her as he celebrates his new queen's pregnancy. He expects a broken robe begging for scraps. But when the limousine doors opened, Lyra isn't alone. With Hurst and 4 young boys, each with eyes of blazing golden power that shakes the very foundation of his pack. The king's breath stops. The crowd falls silent, and with a voice far too deep for a child, the eldest son looks the king in the eye and says, "You smell like a liar." 5 years ago, Alpha King Cyrus Blackwood did the unthinkable. We dragged his fated mate, Lyra, to the border of his territory and threw her into the snow. His reason? The pack healer claimed she was barren. We called her a dead branch on his family tree, useless, broken, and unworthy of his crown. Today, Cyrus has invited Lyra back to the royal pack. He says it's for a peace treaty, but everyone knows the truth. He wants to mock her while he announces his engagement to another woman. He expects to see a broken rogue begging for scraps. But when the limousine doors open, the king is going to stop breathing because she didn't come alone. She brought 4 boys with eyes just like his and power that brings the entire pack to its knees. The envelope was heavy, made of cream-colored cardstock that felt like velvet under Lyra's fingertips. It smelled of expensive cologne, cedar wood, and a faint metallic tang of arrogance. She didn't need to open it to know who sent it. That sense-eater and rain had haunted her nightmares for 5 long years. "Mom, you're crushing the mail." Lyra blinked, the golden hue fading from her eyes as she looked down. Standing at her waist, tugging on her silk blouse, was Leo. At 4 years old, he was already the height of a 6-year-old human, with messy dark hair and eyes that shifted between hazel and a predatory gold. "Hooray, baby," Lyra whispered, smoothing the crumpled edge of the envelope. Just junk mail. It smells like the forest." A second voice chimed in. Nate walked into the kitchen, holding a toy truck in one hand and a juice box in the other. It was Leo's identical mirror, save for a small scar on his chin from roughhousing. "Is it from the Badlands?" "No," Lyra said, her voice hardening. "It's from the past." She walked to the marble island of her penthouse kitchen. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the skyline of Seattle gleamed under the twilight. Lyra wasn't a shivering, weeping girl in rags anymore. She was the CEO of Van Thorkamic, the world's leading supplier of holistic remedies for lichens. She was rich, she was powerful, and she was a mother. She slit the envelope open with a silver knife. "To Miss Lyra Vance, by order of His Majesty, Alpha King Cyrus Blackwood of the Obsidian Moon Pack, you are hereby summoned to the Royal Solstice Ball. The King wishes to extend an olive branch to all former pack members. Furthermore, His Majesty will be officially announcing the conception of his heir with his future queen, Celine Sterling. Your presence is requested to witness the prosperity of the crown." Lyra let out a cold, sharp laugh. It wasn't an invitation. It was a summons to a public execution of her dignity. The conception of his heir, that was the dagger. Wanted her there to see that he had succeeded where she had allegedly failed. Wanted to show her that replacing her was the right choice. "He wants to rub it in," she whispered to the empty room. "He wants to see me break." "Who wants to see you break?" Lyra turned. Her brother, Silas, not by blood, but by bond, leaned against the doorframe. Silas was a beta who had found her half frozen in the snow 5 years ago. He had helped her build her empire. "Cyrus," Lyra said, tossing the invitation onto the counter. "He's inviting me to the Obsidian Moon. He's announcing Celine's pregnancy." Picked up the card, his jaw tightening. "He rejected you for being barren. Now, he invites you to celebrate his fertility." The man was a sadist. "Throw it in the trash." "I should," Lyra agreed. She looked toward the living room where her For Miracles were playing. Leo, Nate, Eli, and Luke, quadruples. The pack healer, a woman named Magda, had looked Lyra in the eye 5 years ago and told the king, "Her womb is dark, my king. She carries the curse of the empty vessel. She will enter line." It had been a lie, a poison Lyra later discovered, administered in her tea by Celine herself to mask Lyra's scent and suppress her heat. But by the time Lyra's returned, she was already exiled, shivering in a motel room, realizing she wasn't just pregnant. She was carrying a litter of royals. "Not throwing it away," Lyra said softly, a dangerous smile touching her lips. Silas looked at her, concerned. "Lyra, don't. You don't need this. You have the boys. You have the company. He thinks I'm a rogue, Lyra said, her eyes flashing violet, the sign of a dormant alpha female waking up. He thinks I'm the same weak girl who begged at his feet while he spat on me. He wants to show off his air. Fine. She looked at the 4 boys piling onto the couch, their laughter shaking the glass of the windows. Their auras were already so strong they set off car alarms when they walked down the street. I think it's time Cyrus met his sons, Lyra said. Pack the bag, Silas. We're going to the Obsidian Moon. The drive to the Obsidian Moon territory took 6 hours. They didn't take a standard car. Lyra took the custom-made armored SUV convoy that usually transported high-value alchemical cargo. As they crossed the border into the king's lands, Lyra felt the shift in the air. The atmosphere here was heavier, saturated with the pheromones of hundreds of wolves. "Mommy, my teeth itch," Eli complained from the backseat. He was the most sensitive of the 4, the one most connected to the spiritual side of the pack link. "It's just the pressure, baby," Lyra soothed him, though her own heart was hammering against her ribs. "Chew on your necklace." He had given them all charms made of moonstone to dampen their sense, hiding their royal lineage until the moment was right. The royal estate was a fortress of stone and glass nestled against the side of a mountain. As the convoy pulled up to the main gates, Lyra saw the press. Cameras flashed, and reporters from the Shifter News Network swarmed the entrance. Cyrus had turned this into a spectacle. "Stay in the car until I give the signal," Lyra commanded Silas, who was driving the second vehicle with the boys and their nanny. "I go in first." "Be careful, Lyra," Silas said through the earpiece. Lyra stepped out of the first limousine. She wasn't wearing the rags Cyrus remembered. She wore a gown of midnightable silk, cut dangerously low in the back, hugging curves that motherhood had only made more luscious. Diamonds dripped from her ears, and her hair was a cascading waterfall of dark chocolate waves. A hush fell over the red carpet. "Is that the rejected mate? She looks expensive. I thought she was a rogrette." Lyra walked with her head high, ignoring the whispers. She ascended the grand stairs and entered the ballroom. It was exactly as she remembered, only colder. Crystal chandeliers, gold leaf on the pillars, and at the far end on a raised dais sat the 2 thrones. King Cyrus Blackwood sat on the larger one. He looked older than she remembered. His jaw was sharper, his eyes harder like chips of flint. He wore a tuxedo that strained against his muscular shoulders. Next to him sat Celine. She was glowing, one hand resting possessively on a very small, barely visible bump on her stomach. She wore white, feigning an innocence she had never possessed. When the steward announced Miss Lyra Vance, the music stopped. Cyrus's head snapped up. For a moment, time froze. Iris's eyes locked onto hers. Lyra saw a flicker of shock, perhaps even desire, before the mask of the cruel king slammed back into place. He stood up, descending the stairs of the dais, slowly prowling toward her like a predator cornering a rabbit. The crowd parted, creating a wide circle around. "You came," Cyrus said. His voice was a deep rumble that vibrated in Lyra's chest, trying to trigger the mate bond she had fought so hard to suppress. "You invited me, Your Majesty," Lyra replied, her voice smooth and cool as glass. It would have been rude to decline. Iris stopped 2 feet from her. He sniffed the air, confused. He expected the smell of misery and poverty. Instead, he smelled money, confidence, and something else. "Milk and vanilla. I see you found a way to clothe yourself," Cyrus sneered, though his heart wasn't in it. He was too busy staring at her face, looking for the girl he had destroyed. "I invited you so you could see what a true queen looks like. Celine is carrying the future of this pack." Celine sashayed down the steps, linking her arm through Cyrus's. "Oh, Cyrus, don't be so harsh." Poor Lyra. It must be so hard for her to see us, knowing she is empty inside. Celine's eyes gleamed with malice. "Did you bring a gift for the baby? Or perhaps you're looking for a handout?" Lyra smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf who knows the trap has been sprung. "I didn't bring a gift," Lyra said, her voice projecting to the back of the silent room. "And I certainly didn't come for a handout. I came to correct a narrative." "Narrative?" Cyrus scoffed. "The only narrative is that you are barren, Lyra. You were unfit to be a mother, unfit to be a queen. My line would have died with you." "Your line?" Lyra raised an eyebrow. "You speak so confidently about your line, Cyrus, but you seem to have forgotten how genetics work." "What are you talking about?" Cyrus growled, his patience thinning. "Leave now before I have the guards throw you out." You are a stain on the celebration. I'll leave, Lyra said, taking a step back. But my children were promised a dance. Cyrus froze. You what? My children? Lyra repeated. She raised her hand and snapped her fingers. The double doors at the entrance of the ballroom, which had been closed behind her, burst open. It wasn't a polite opening. The doors were flung wide with such force that one of the hinges cracked. Hillis walked in looking smug, and nobody was looking at Silas. Walking in a V formation behind him were 4 small boys. They wore Racine miniature-tailored suits. Leo in navy, Nate in blacks, Eli in grey, and Luca burgundy. They didn't walk like toddlers. They walked with the synchronized, prowling gait of apex predators. The crowd gasped. The resemblance was undeniable. They had Cyrus's black hair. They had Cyrus's sharp nose. But it was what happened next that shattered the room. Leo, the leader, stopped 10 feet away from the king. He looked up at the massive man towering over him. Leo didn't flinch. He didn't hide behind his mother. Leo's eyes flashed a brilliant, blinding gold, the color of an alpha king. And then, in a voice that carried a terrifying, gravelly depth for a 4-year-old, Leo spoke. "You smell like a liar." Cyrus staggered back as if he'd been punched. The alpha, or irradiating off these 4 children, hit him like a physical wave. It wasn't just alpha blood. It was royal blood, concentrated, undiluted. "Lyra," Cyrus whispered, the color draining from his face as he looked from the boys to his rejected mate. "What? Who are they?" Lyra stepped forward, placing a protective hand on Leo's shoulder. "These are your sons, Cyrus," she said, her voice ice cold. "They are Nate, Eli, and Luke." She glared at Celine, who looked as if she were about to faint. "And as you can see," Lyra hissed, "I am anything but barren." The silence in the ballroom was absolute. It was the kind of silence that precedes a natural disaster, the drawing back of the ocean before the tsunami hits. King Cyrus Blackwood, the man who had united the northern territories and crushed rebellions with a single command, was trembling. He looked at the 4 boys standing in a defensive phalanx in front of Lyra. Leo, the one who had spoken, glared at him with eyes of molten gold. Nate stood with his fists clenched, vibrating with energy. Eli looked sad, tilting his head as if listening to a song only he could hear. Luke, the youngest by 2 minutes, watched Cyrus with a calculating, unnerving stillness. "Bastards!" The shriek tore through the silence, shattering the spell. Celine stumbled down the remaining stairs, her face twisted into a mask of ugly desperation. She pointed a manicure finger at Lyra. "She's lying," Celine screamed, her voice cracking. "She's ash-slapped with a rogue and brought these mongrels here to humiliate the crown. They can't be Cyrus's. She's barren, the healer said so." Lyra didn't flinch. She didn't even look at Celine. She kept her eyes locked on Cyrus. "Do they look like rogues to you, Cyrus?" Lyra asked softly. Cyrus looked at Celine, his lip curling in a snarl. "Silence, Celine." Oh, Celine grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his suit jacket. "Kick them out, kill them. They are threatening my unborn child, our heir." At the mention of the word kill, the air in the room suddenly grew heavy. It became hard to breathe. Champagne glasses on the nearby tables began to rattle, with Cyrus releasing his aura. It was the boys. Eli, the sensitive one, stepped forward. His eyes began to glow a soft, eerie violet matching his mother's. "Would it hurt us?" he asked, his voice echoing with a strange, harmonic distortion. The ground beneath Celine's feet cracked. The literal hairline fracture zipped across the marble floor, stopping right at the toe of her white shoe. She gasped and scrambled back, tripping over her dress and falling hard onto her backside. "Sorcery!" a noble shouted from the back. "No," a raspy voice cut through the panic. "Dominion." From the shadows of the VIP alcove, Elder Marcus emerged. He was the oldest wolf in the pack, a man who had served Cyrus's grandfather. He walked with a cane, but his eyes were sharp. He hobbled toward the boys, ignoring the gasps of the crowd. He stopped in front of Leo. The old wolf lowered his head, exposing his neck, a sign of ultimate submission. "Elder Marcus," Celine shrieked from the floor. "What are you doing?" "Stand up." "I cannot," Marcus wheezed, looking up at Leo with reverence. "The blood calls. It is pure. It is concentrated." He looked at Cyrus. "My king, these are not just your sons. This is a quadruple T Alpha strain. It has not been seen in 500 years. They are a blessing from the moon goddess herself. Hyras felt the truth of it in his marrow. His wolf was clawing at his chest, howling to get to his pups. He took a step forward, his hand reaching out toward Leo's dark hair. "My sons," Cyrus breathed, his voice broken. "Lyra, why? Why did you keep them from me?" Lyra slapped his hand away. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Don't you dare rewrite history, Cyrus," she spat, her composure cracking just enough to show the magma beneath. "You threw me out. You stripped me of my title. You told me I was a dead branch. You didn't want me. You wanted a broodmare. I was told you were barren." Cyrus roared, his pain turning into defensive anger. "Magda showed me the results. I had a duty to the pack to produce an heir. And so you replaced me before my side of the bed was cold." Lyra shot back. "And now look at you. 5 years later, celebrating a pregnancy that hasn't even reached the first trimester, while your actual heirs, 4 of them, have been raised without a father. I didn't know. Or you didn't care enough to check." Lyra shouted back. "You took the word of a healer who was on Celine's payroll." The room gasped. Celine, who was being helped up by a steward, went pale. "Lithe, slandering me." Hyras turned slowly to look at Celine. The look on his face was terrifying. It promised violence. But before he could speak, Leo stepped between his parents. "Mom," the boy said, tugging on Lyra's dress. "I'm hungry, and this place smells like sour milk." He glared at Celine. Lyra took a deep breath. Smoothing her dress, she turned to Silas. "Get the boys. We're leaving." Cyrus stepped in front of her, blocking her path. His alpha aura flared instinctively, trying to command her. "You are not taking my heirs anywhere. They belong to the pack. They belong to the crown." Lyra's eyes flashed violet again. She didn't bow. She didn't cower. She stepped into his space, her nose inches from his chest. "I'm not a pack member, Cyrus. I am a rogue. You made me one. And these boys, they are Vance wolves. They don't carry the name Blackwood. If you try to keep us here against my will, I will bring down the wrath of the council. I will sue you for custody in human court, and I will challenge you for leadership in wolf court." "Do you really want to fight for Alphys and their mother?" Cyrus gritted his teeth. He looked at the boys. They were watching him with hostility. If he forced them to stay, they would hate him. "Stay," Cyrus pleaded, his voice dropping to a whisper so the crowd couldn't hear. "Please, not as prisoners, as guests. If we give me a chance to know them. Just for the weekend. The solstice ball is in 2 days. Stay until then." Lyra looked at her sons. Nate was looking at the buffet table with longing. Eli looked tired. "Fine," Lyra said clippedly. "We stay for the weekend. But we stay in the east wing. Celine comes nowhere near us. And if you raise your voice at them, Cyrus, I will rip your throat out myself." Cyrus nodded, relief washing over him. "Agreed." He watched as Lyra, Silas, and his 4 sons marched out of the ballroom, flanked by the royal guard. He turned back to the row. The celebration was ruined. The conception announcement was a joke. He looked at Celine, who was sobbing fake tears into a handkerchief. "Clear the room," Cyrus ordered his beta. "Everyone out." He walked over to Celine. She reached for him. "Oh, Cyrus, what a nightmare. That woman is a witch." Riz grabbed her wrist. He didn't squeeze hard enough to break it, but hard enough to bruise. "Go to your room, Celine," he said, his voice void of emotion, "and pray that when I find Magda the healer, she tells me a story that matches yours. Because if I find out you had anything to do with Lyra's diagnosis 5 years ago, I won't just break our engagement. I will hunt you for sport." The East Wing was the most secure part of the castle, usually reserved for visiting dignitaries. Now it was a fortress for the Vance family. Lyra sat on the edge of the king-sized bed in the master suite. The boys were finally asleep in the adjoining room, exhausted by the travel and the emotional output of the evening. Silas was posted outside the door, pacing. Lyra's hands were shaking. She poured herself a glass of water from the carafe on the nightstand. Seeing Cyrus again had been harder than she anticipated. The pull of the mate bond was still there, a jagged hook in her heart. It would be so easy to fall into his arms, to let him be the strong alpha king. She remembered the snow. She remembered the cold. No. Knock. Go away, Cyrus, she said, sensing his scent through the heavy oak door. Cedar and rain. He was stronger now, laced with distress. I have brought food. Cyrus's voice came through the wood. The boys, they didn't eat at the party. Lyra sighed. She unlocked the door and opened it a crack. Stood there, holding the silver tray piled high with burgers, fries, and chocolate milkshakes. It was absurdly domestic for a king. I remember you used to crave burgers after a crisis, he said sheepishly. Lyra opened the door wider to let him in, but she stayed cold. I'm not the one in crisis, Cyrus. You are. He set the tray on the table and turned to her. The arrogance was gone. He looked like a man who had seen a ghost. Her magnificent Lyra, he said softly. Leo, he has the command at 4 years old. That shouldn't be possible. They are strong because they had to be, Lyra said, crossing her arms. They had to protect me. From whom? From everything. The world isn't kind to a lone woman with 4 pups. Cyrus flinched. I sent trackers after you left. I tried to find you after a month. I wanted to make sure you were alive. They couldn't find a trace. I didn't want to be found. I master sent. Lyra. Cyrus took a step closer. The healer, Magda. She disappeared 3 days after you were exiled. I thought she had retired to the coast. I sent my Delta to find her tonight. We found her records. She bought a villa in the south of France. Thus, Lyra raised an eyebrow. A villa on a pack healer's salary. Exactly. Cyrus's eyes darkened. I was blind. I was young, stupid, and pressured by the council to produce an heir. Celine, she was always there, whispering in my ear. I let her poison my mind against you. That doesn't absolve you, Cyrus. You are the alpha. The final decision was yours. You chose to believe I was broken. I know, Cyrus whispered, and I will spend the rest of my life atoning for it. But please let me know them. Let me be a father. You can try, Lyra said, but trust is earned. And right now, your account is overdrawn. Before Cyrus could respond, a scream pierced the air. It came from the boys' room. Lyra and Cyrus moved instantly. They burst into the adjoining room. Nate was sitting up in bed, screaming, clutching his stomach. Luke was vomiting on the floor. Leo was growling at the window, his eyes glowing furiously. What happened? Lyra shouted, rushing to Nate. His skin was burning hot. The juice, Leo yelled, pointing to a juice box on the nightstand. The maid brought juice. Nate and Luke drank it. Cyrus grabbed the juice box. He sniffed it. Under the smell of apple, there was something acrid. Wolfsbane. Concentrated liquid wolfsbane. Guards, Cyrus roared, the sound shaking the stone walls. Rushed in. Weapon drawn. Get the royal physician. Now, Cyrus barked. He turned to Lyra, who was cradling Nate. Her hands were glowing with a soft white light. A mother's healing magic. Weak, but desperate. It hurts, Mummy, Nate cried. I know, baby. I know. Lyra wept. She looked up at Cyrus, her eyes full of murder. She tried to kill them. She tried to kill my babies. Cyrus's face went completely still. It was the face of a monster surfacing. Wolfsbane doesn't kill alphas easily, Cyrus said, his voice terrifyingly calm. It will make them sick, but they will survive. Their blood is too strong. He handed the poison juice box to Silas. Keep this safe, Cyrus ordered, and guard this door. If anyone other than the doctor tries to enter, kill them. I don't care if it's the Prime Minister. Where are you going? Lyra asked, clutching Nate tightly. Cyrus walked to the window Leo had been growling at. He looked out toward the west wing where the Queen's chambers were. I'm going to get the antidote, Cyrus said, and then I am going to remind Celine why I'm called the Butcher of the North. He didn't use the door. He smashed the window open and leapt out into the night, shifting mid-air into a massive midnight black wolf. His howl tore through the estate, a sound of pure rage that made every wolf within 10 miles drop to their belly in fear. Lyra held her sick children, rocking them back and forth. But she wasn't just afraid anymore. She was angry. She looked at Eli and Leo, who weren't hurt but terrified. Leo, Lyra said, her voice steady. Watch over your brothers. Run. Lyra stood up. The motherly warmth was gone. In his place was the cold, hard steel of a CIO who had clawed her way up from nothing. Hillis, watch the boys, she commanded. Lyra, you can't go out there, Silas warned. Lyra walked to her suitcase. She pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a vial of clear liquid. Vance Alchemic's most dangerous creation, a serum that stripped a wolf of their ability to shift. Permanent neutralization. Wants to play the king, Lyra said, clutching the vial. But he is too soft. He will interrogate her. He will look for proof. She walked to the door. I don't need proof. I need a shovel. She stepped out into the hallway. The solstice ball was about to turn into a massacre. While King Cyrus was tearing through the lower courtyards, drawing the attention of every god and warrior in the castle with his rampage, Lyra moved through the corridors like a phantom. She didn't run. Running attracted attention. She walked with the purposeful stride of a woman who owned the building. Her heels clicked rhythmically on the stone floor, a countdown clock ticking toward destruction. The west wing was usually heavily guarded, but the chaos downstairs had stripped the hallway bare. The sounds of snarling wolves and shouting men echoed from the floors below, providing the perfect cover. Lyra reached the double, mahogany doors of the Queen's suite. She didn't knock. She placed her hand on the lock. A small hiss sounded as she applied a drop of corrosive acid from her alchemic kit. Another to love-hurt raid. The lock melted. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. Celine was there. She wasn't sleeping. She was frantically shoving jewelry and stacks of cash into a designer duffel bag. She was still wearing her white gown, now stained with wine. Celine froze as the door clicked shut. She spun around, her eyes widening when she saw Ira. Celine hissed, her hands curling into claws. How did you get past the guards? Cyrus is currently dismantling your security detail downstairs, Lyra said calmly, locking the deadbolt behind her. He's quite upset about his sons being poisoned. Celine let out a nervous, high-pitched laugh. I don't know what you're talking about. That ever happened to those brats? It was probably their own filth. Rogue sickness. Lyra walked further into the room. She surveyed the luxury, the silk drapes, the gold vanity, the overflowing closet. You have everything, Celine. You have the title, the money, the king. Why did you have to touch my children? Because they are threats, Celine screamed, dropping the pretense. Ooh. This was finally forgetting you. He was finally looking at me. And then you waltz in with 4 carbon copies of him. If they live, my child will never be king. Your child? Lyra tilted her head, her eyes scanning Celine's body. She took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of the room. That's strange. I smell fear. I smell greed. I smell expensive perfume. But I don't smell a second heartbeat. Celine went pale. She instinctively covered her stomach. You're not pregnant, are you? Lyra whispered, the realization hitting her. It's a pillow, or a spell. It doesn't matter, Celine shrieked. I would have been, once we were married, once the mating ceremony was complete. Next week I would have given him an heir. But you ruined it. Celine's eyes flashed red, a beta trying to mimic an alpha's rage. She lunged at Lyra, claws aiming for her face. Lyra didn't flinch. 5 years in the human world, building an empire while raising for superpowered wolf boys, had taught her reflexes that no pampered socialite could match. Lyra sidestepped the swipe, grabbed Celine's wrist, and twisted it behind her back with a sickening crack. Celine screamed, dropping to her knees. You poisoned my sons with wolfsbane, Lyra murmured into Celine's ear, holding her pinned against the floor. Do you know what the antidote is? Go to hell, Celine spat. Wrong answer. Lyra pulled the velvet box from her pocket. He flipped it open with her thumb and withdrew the syringe. The liquid inside was clear, viscous, and glowed with a faint, terrifying blue light. This is a product we developed at Vance Alchemic for rogue wolves who lose their minds, Lyra explained, her voice conversational. It binds to the lycanthropogene and severs the connection to the moon. It doesn't kill you, but it kills the wolf, permanently. Celine stopped struggling. Her eyes bulged in terror. For a werewolf, losing their wolf was a fate worse than death. It meant becoming human. Wig. No, Celine begged, tears streaming down her face. No, please. I'll tell you where the antidote is. It's in the safe, behind the painting. Code 7741. Please, Lyra, don't take my wolf. 7741, Lyra repeated. Thank you. Please. Celine sobbed. I'm sorry. I'll leave. I'll never come back. Lyra looked down at the woman who had ruined her life 5 years ago. She remembered the snow. She remembered the cold. She remembered Nate screaming in pain 10 minutes ago. You took my womb, or so you thought, Lyra said coldly. plunging the needle into Celine's neck. "I'm taking your claws." She depressed the plunger. A Celine shriek, a sound that started as a howl and ended as a human scream. Her body convulsed violently as the magic was ripped from her blood. Her eyes, once flashing red, dulled to a flat, muddy brown. The power in her muscles dissolved. Lyra stood up, smoothing her dress. She walked to the painting of the moon on the wall, swung it aside, and punched in the code. Inside the safe sat a small vial of blue liquid. The antidote. Lyra grabbed it. She turned back to Celine, who was curled in a fetal position on the rug, weeping, shivering, and completely, utterly human. "You're not Belluna anymore, Celine," Lyra said. "You're just a girl in a stolen dress." Lyra walked out, leaving the door unlocked. Lyra ran back to the east wing, her heels in her hand, sprinting barefoot across the cold stone. She burst into the room just as Cyrus arrived from the opposite direction. Cyrus was covered in sweat and blood not his own. He had shifted back to human form, wearing a pair of torn trousers he must have grabbed from a guard. His chest was heaving, his eyes wild. "Lyra," he gasped, seeing her. Did you find her? Did she talk?" "I got it," Lyra said, holding up the blue vial. They rushed to the bed where Nate and Luke were lying. They were pale, the breathing shallow and dragged. Eli and Leo were holding their hands, crying silently. Daddy Nate wheezed, his eyes fluttering open as he sensed Cyrus's massive aura filling the room. Cyrus's heart shattered. It was the first time one of them had called him Daddy. "I'm here, son. I'm here," Cyrus choked out, dropping to his knees beside the bed. His large, trembling hands hovered over the small boy, afraid to touch him. "Give it to them," Lyra commanded, handing him the vial. "Half for Nate, half for Luke." Cyrus uncorked the vial with his teeth. He gently lifted Nate's head. "Drink this, brave one. It will taste like blueberries." Nate drank. Then Luke. For a terrifying minute, nothing happened. The room was silent, save for the harsh breathing of the sick boys. Then color rushed back into Nate's cheeks. He coughed, spitting up a bit of black bile, and took a deep, clear breath. Luke sat up, rubbing his eyes. "My tummy stopped hurting," Luke whispered. Lyra let out a sob she had been holding for an hour and collapsed onto the bed, pulling all four boys into her arms. "Oh, thank God. Thank God." Cyrus stayed on his knees watching them. He felt like an intruder in this intimate circle of love and survival. He had failed to protect them. Leo, the eldest, looked over his shoulder at Cyrus. The boy's golden eyes were assessing. "Smash the window," Leo said, pointing to the shattered glass where Cyrus had jumped out earlier. "I did," Cyrus admitted. "He turned into a big wolf," Leo added. "I did. To save us." Cyrus nodded, a lump in his throat. "I would burn the world to save you, Leo. I'm sorry I was late." Leo hesitated, then wriggled one arm free from his mother's hug and reached out. He placed his small hand on Cyrus's rough, blood-stained cheek. "You smell like Mom now," Leo said. "You smell like Pac." Cyrus closed his eyes, leaning into the touch of his son. A tear tracked through the grime on his face. The bond, the ancient, undeniable alpha blood bond, snapped firmly into place, linking his soul to the four boys. "Lyra," Cyrus said, his voice thick. "Thank you." Lyra looked up, wiping her eyes. She looked exhausted but fierce. "Don't thank me yet. We have a problem. Celine." Cyrus's eyes darkened. "I will deal with her. She's dealt with," Lyra said dismissively. "She's human now. I neutralized her wolf." He also admitted the pregnancy was fake. Cyrus's jaw dropped. "Fake? Pillows and lies. She was never carrying your heir." Cyrus growled, low in his chest. "I should kill her. She's worse than dead. She's powerless in a world of predators. But that's not the problem," Lyra said, standing up and walking to the window. She looked down at the courtyard. Lights were flashing. Not police lights. Council enforcement lights. Black S.U. verses with the insignia of the High Council of Werewolves were swarming the gate. "The council is here," Lyra said grimly. "They didn't come for the party. They came because four unregistered alpha heirs just stepped onto royal soil. And because a rogue just neutralized the future queen. They can't touch you," Cyrus said, standing up, his alpha dominance flooding the room. "You're my mate. They're my sons." "I am not your mate, Cyrus," Lyra reminded him sharply. "You rejected me. Remember? Legally, I am a rogue trespasser who just assaulted a member of the royal court. And these boys to the council, they are threats to the stability of the hierarchy. For alphas in one litter. That's not a blessing to them. It's a civil war waiting to happen. Rhys walked over to her. He grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. Then I will reinstate you, Cyrus swore. Tonight, I will claim you before the council. I will tear up the rejection decree. It's not that simple. Lyra pulled away. I have a life, Cyrus. I have a company. I'm not just some wolf you can pick up and put down whenever it suits your politics. Boom. The heavy oak doors of the suite shook. Someone was pounding on them. Opened. By order of the High Council. A voice boomed from the hallway. We have a warrant for the arrest of Lyra Vance and the custody of the unregistered minors. The boys whimpered, huddling together. Rhys turned to the door. His eyes began to glow, shifting from human hazel to the deep, swirling crimson of the Alpha King. Silas, Cyrus barked, not looking back. Take the boys into the bathroom. Lock the door. Put headphones on them. What are you going to do? Lyra asked, stepping beside him. Her hands glowed with her own violet energy. Rhys ripped his shirt off, revealing the tattoo of the royal crest on his chest. I'm going to remind the council who sits on the throne, Cyrus snarled. Nobody takes my pups. He threw the door open. Standing in the hallway were 12 council enforcers, heavily armed with silver-tipped spears and Spersevis magic collars. Behind them stood Elder Marcus, looking grim, and a tall, thin man in a grey suit, Councilman Draven. Cyrus's political rival. King Cyrus Draven smiled thinly. Step aside. The rogue woman has committed treason against the crown's consort, and the children must be tested for stability. Cyrus didn't step aside. He stepped forward. The woman is not a rogue, Cyrus announced, his voice booming down the corridor, shaking the dust from the tapestries. She is the true queen, and the children are not for testing. They are my heirs. They are abominations, Draven sneered. Quadruples. It's unnatural. They must be culled to prevent a power struggle. At the word culled, Lyra lost it. She didn't wait for Cyrus. She stepped out from behind him. If you want to cull my sons, Lyra said, her voice dropping into a demonic Walton growl that shocked even Cyrus, you will have to burn this entire castle down with me inside it. She raised her hand. She wasn't holding a weapon. She was holding her phone. And she added, I'm live streaming this to the Global Shifter Network. Say hello to 3 million viewers, Councilman. Draven froze. The war had just begun. But this time, it wasn't fought with claws alone. It was fought with public opinion. The phone in Lyra's hand was a modern shield against an ancient tyranny. On the screen, the viewer count was skyrocketing. 3 million. 3.5 million. 4 million. The comment section was a blur of outrage. They want to kill the pups. That's the CEO of Vance Alchemic. She's the mother. Down with the council. Protect the royal blood. Councilman Draven stared at the phone, his face draining of color. He was a creature of shadows and backroom deals, not prepared for the harsh light of viral scrutiny. This is preposterous, Draven sputtered, trying to shield his face with a manicured hand. Turn that off immediately, Miss Vance. You are violating council protocol. I am protecting my children from a coup, Lyra said, her voice steady and broadcast ready. She stepped closer to Draven, the camera tracking him. Tell the world, Councilman. Why do you want to cull for healthy alpha heirs? Is it because they are unstable? Or is it because for strong sons make King Cyrus as they're unshakable, and you prefer a king who is weak and dare less? Draven's eyes darted around. The enforcers behind him looked uneasy. They were warriors, but they were also pack members. The idea of harming pups, real pups, was anathema to their instincts. And with the whole world watching, they knew following Draven's orders would be social suicide. King Cyrus, Draven hissed, turned to the alpha. Control your mate. Rhys laughed. It was a dark, dangerous sound. Control her? Ho. Cyrus stepped up beside Lyra, his shoulder brushing hers. He looked into the Cabral ends, his golden eyes burning with intensity. I couldn't control her if I wanted to. She is the strongest wolf in this room, and she is right. He turned to his beta, who had just arrived at the end of the hall, breathless. Report, Beta Jackson, Cyrus commanded. Jackson held up a tablet. We found the financial trails, my king. The payments to Magda the healer 5 years ago didn't just come from Celine's private account. They were routed through a shell company owned by Councilman Draven. The hallway went silent. Even the comments on the live stream seemed to freeze for a split second before exploding. Lyra lowered the phone slightly, looking at Draven with genuine disgust. Yo, it was politics. Draven screamed, realizing his cover was blown. Cyrus was too young, too aggressive. We needed a manageable bloodline. Selene was pliable. You were a variable we couldn't control. Making you Baron was necessary for the stability of the North. You stole 5 years of my life, Cyrus said, his voice dropping to a subsonic rumble that made the windows vibrate. You stole my son's childhoods. Cyrus moved. He didn't shoved. He didn't need to. He moved with the raw, blurring speed of an alpha king. Before the enforcers could even raise their spears, Cyrus had Draven by the throat, lifting the tall man 3 feet off the ground against the stone wall. I invoke the right of kings, Cyrus bellowed. The enforcers instantly dropped to one knee, lowering their heads. The right of kings was the absolute law. The Alpha King's judgment in matters of treason was final and immediate. Raven, Cyrus growled, tightening his grip. For treason against the crown, for conspiracy to harm the royal heirs, and for the poisoning of my mate's reputation, I strip you of your rank. I strip you of your citizenship. Cyrus leaned in close. Run, he whispered. You have 10 minutes to cross the border. After that, the hunt begins. He dropped Draven. The disgraced councilman scrambled to his feet, gasping for air. He looked at the enforcers, but they didn't move. He looked at the camera Lyra was still holding. He saw his career, his life, incinerated. They turned and fled down the corridor, the sound of his cowardly footsteps echoing into the night. Lyra ended the live stream. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't oppressive anymore. It was the silence of a storm that had finally broken. Cyrus turned to the enforcers. Get out of my sight. Guard the perimeter. If Draven isn't gone in 10 minutes, bring me his head. Yes, my king. The enforcers scrambled away. Cyrus and Lyra were left alone in the hallway. The door to the suite opened slowly. Speaked out, holding a sleeping Luke. Is it over? Silas asked. The danger is over, Lyra said, her shoulders finally slumping. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her trembling. Cyrus reached out his hand, hovering near her waist. Lyra, don't, she whispered, stepping back. We won, Cyrus, but that doesn't fix us. I know, Cyrus said humbly. I don't expect it to. But please don't leave tonight. The boys are sick. You are exhausted. Stay. Lyra looked at him. She saw the regret etched into his features. She saw the way he looked at Luke in Silas's arms with a hunger and love that couldn't be faked. We stayed a night, Lyra agreed. For them, the sun rose over the Obsidian Moon territory, bathing the snow-pad mountains in pink and gold. Lyra sat on the balcony of the East Wing, drinking coffee. The boys were watching cartoons in the living room, fully recovered, thanks to the antidote in their alpha healing speed. Cyrus stepped onto the balcony. He was wearing fresh clothes, but he looked like he hadn't slept. I have annulled the engagement to Selene, he said, staring out at his kingdom. She has been escorted to the human settlements. Without her wolf, she can do no harm. Good, Lyra said. I also issued a decree this morning, Cyrus continued, restoring your status. You are not a rogue, Lyra. You are the Luna of this pack. You always were. Lyra set her cup down. I have a company in Seattle, Cyrus. I have a life. I can't just play queen because you signed a paper. I know, Cyrus turned to her. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. That's why I'm not asking you to stay as my subject. I'm asking you to stay as my equal. He opened the pouch. Inside wasn't a ring. There was a key. This is the key to the council chambers, Cyrus said. I'm dissolving the High Council. I want to replace it with a Du Archie. King and Queen. Equal veto power. You keep your company. Move the headquarters here. We have the infrastructure. But rule with me. Not behind me. Lyra looked at the key. It was a tempting offer. Not for the power, but for the change she could bring. For the safety she could ensure for her sons. And us? Lyra asked, meeting his eyes. What are we? Business partners? Cyrus took a step closer. The scent of rain and cedar wrapped around her, triggering that deep, primal ache she had ignored for 5 years. We are mates, Lyra, he said softly. I broke us. I know that. I will spend every day for the rest of my life trying to fix it. I will court you. I will earn you. I won't touch you until you ask me to. But I will never let you go again. Lyra looked at him. She saw the boy she had fallen in love with years ago, now hardened by mistakes, but wiser for them. For very energetic, very destructive sons, Lyra warned, a small smile playing on her lips. Raising them is going to be a nightmare. Smiled, a genuine, blinding smile that took years off his face. Look forward to the chaos. Lyra took the key. We try, she said, one day at a time. The training grounds of the Obsidian Moon Pack were dusty and loud. Keep your guard up, Nate. I lie. Stop predicting his moves and just hit him. King Cyrus shouted instructions, but there was pride in his voice. In the center of the ring, 9-year-old Nate and Eli were spying. They were fast, unnaturally fast. On the sidelines, Leo was reading a book on military strategy, while Luke was helping the younger pups of the pack learn how to tie their shoes. Lyra watched from the terrace above. He wore a tailored suit, a crown of white gold resting lightly on her head. She had just finished a conference call with the Global Shifter Alliance. Vansel Chemic was now the primary supplier for the entire supernatural world, and the Obsidian Moon Pack was the wealthiest, most powerful territory in history. She felt a pair of strong arms wrap around her waist from behind. Cyrus rested his chin on her shoulder. They're getting strong, Cyrus murmured, kissing her neck. They get it from their mother, Lyra teased, leaning back into him. True, Cyrus agreed. Everything good in them comes from you. He spun her around. The years had been kind to them. The work had been hard rebuilding. First took time, but the bond between them was now tempered steel, unbreakable. Happy anniversary, Cyrus whispered. It's not our anniversary, Lyra frowned. We got married in the spring. It's October. It's the anniversary of the day you came back, Cyrus said seriously. The day you walked into my ballroom and saved me from myself. Lyra softened. She reached up and ran her hand through his hair, which was just starting to gray at the temples. Best decision I ever made, she admitted. Mom, Dad. Leo was waving from the field. Eli shifted. Fully. Lyra and Cyrus looked down. Sure enough. A sleek gray wolf pup was yipping and running in circles, chasing his tail. Cyrus laughed, the sound booming across the valley. He took Lyra's hand. Ready to handle another alpha wolf? He asked. Lyra squeezed his hand, her eyes glowing violet. I've handled 5 of you so far, she said. I think I can handle 1 more. They walked down the stairs together into the sun, toward their family. The rejection was a distant memory, buried under the snows of the past. In the warmth of the present, the Alpha King and his once rejected mate had built a dynasty that would last forever. And that is the story of how Lyra Vance turned a public rejection into the ultimate royal comeback. She didn't just survive, she conquered. She proved that a woman's worth isn't defined by a label and that sometimes the best revenge is living happily and powerfully ever after. I love that she didn't just forgive him instantly. She made him earn it. She made him change the laws and the government before she let him back into her heart. That is true queen energy. Why did you guys think? Did Celine get what she deserved, losing her wolf, or is that too harsh? And which of the quadruples is your favorite? I think Leo is going to be a scary king one day. If you enjoyed this story, please smash the like button. It really helps the channel grow so I can bring you more long-form sagas like this one. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next episode. Comment Alpha down below if you made it to the very end. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.